welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am your host, Jessica, and I am here with the author of The Tutor, which is a wild ride. Please introduce yourself and tell us where the idea of this story came from.
So hi, I'm Courtney Psak, and yeah, my story, The Tutor, I guess I'll give a little pitch of what it is first before I get to how I came up with it. But it's about this woman, Rose. She's a single mom to her 14-year-old son, James, when she meets this guy, Grant, and they fall in love. And shortly after getting married, his mother, Evelyn, winds up getting diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And so he asks his family if they'd be willing to move down and take care of her. Now, what the other thing about Grant is he comes from a generational wealthy family. So Evelyn is the type of person that's not used to not getting her way. So she makes it very clear early on to Rose that she doesn't think Grant is good enough for her son, and she will do everything from bribery to even blackmail to get her to see things her way. Now, of course, on the other side, we discover that Grant's father has passed away 20 years ago, but actually under suspicious circumstances. So Rose starts doing a little digging on her own. And then, of course, we have Isabel, who has had sort of an obsession with this family for quite some time, has followed them from New York to Palm Beach, and has edged her way in as the son's tutor. And when she confronts them about the real reason as to why she's here, it'll rock this family's foundation to its very core. So that's basically the gist of it. And, I loved the idea of having somebody come in that, how well do we know the people that we let in our house? And, the idea came into fruition when we had moved here from New York to Palm Beach. So I have a little bit of like Rose's understanding of being like kind of a fish out of water. But I had an 18-month-old with me, and we didn't know anybody here. We came down for my husband's work, so we had no friends or recommendations that we could kind of figure out like babysitter wise. So you have care.com, which is great, and you have the background checks and things like that, but you're still like, it didn't help that, my son was young enough. I couldn't know everything that was happening that, kind of kept me on the edge a little bit. And so, you kind of look at these different ways that people can come in, and obviously a lot of people go with the nanny approach and things like that. But I liked the idea of the tutor because the way she edges her way in is she's on the beach, happened to be walking by, sees the son catch a wave, compliments him, and they had happened to run into each other on the first day of school. So when his mom comes up and is like, hi, who are you? Who are you talking to my son? She's like, oh, I'm new. I just started at this school. I'm a teacher. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh, you're a teacher there. She goes, yeah, I just moved from New York from this previous school. And she goes, oh, my son was there too. She's like, oh, by the way, I offer tutoring lessons, and like, the school that James is starting at is one of the most prestigious schools in the country, and she wants him to be able to keep up. So it seems like, oh, of course, yeah, why wouldn't I do this? Like, if she's background checked by two other schools, why wouldn't this work? So, you never know who to necessarily trust and what their motives are.
Definitely. And it was, it's not just Isabel where the trust is kind of wavering. It's Grant, it's Evelyn, it's Rose herself, and there's these rotating POVs between Evelyn, Rose, and Isabel that are sort of helping the reader piece together what is really going on, who has what secret, and how these secrets are sort of interconnected. And a lot of them are very, very surprising. Um, is this your debut novel?
Um, it is my debut traditionally published novel and my debut mystery thriller novel. So, I mean, I feel it's funny when people say the word debut because when you talk to debut authors, they're like, it's my fifth or sixth book that I threw out and this one worked, So there's no like magic formula where you're like, oh, I just read a book and then everything else happens and it's great. So yeah, about 10 years ago, I had self-published a women's fiction novel. I had sent it around for submissions, and an agent was nice enough to get back to me and tell me, like, look, this is a really great book, but no one's doing women's fiction right now. Like, unless you were doing 50 Shades or Twilight, like, it wasn't going anywhere. So she was like, but I would encourage you to self-publish. And, I held off for a while. No, I don't have the confidence in being able to do this. But then, a couple years later, I finally decided, like, I'm just gonna put the effort in, figure it out. And I was really glad I did because it made me realize how hard it is in the publishing industry. It's not just write a book and here you go. There's a lot of work that goes into the marketing, the cover design, the publicity, all those things. So after that, I kind of took a step back because I was working full time. My husband and I knew we wanted to have kids, so I was like, I think I want to fully commit to this in the genre I want when I'm ready. So yeah, the minute that my son went to school, I got started on this.
So talk about setting. You talk about how you can relate to Rose and having been a New Yorker and moving to Palm Beach. The there is like, I mean, I'm familiar with both of those places
Mhm.
because I grew up going to Palm Beach. My grandparents had a condo which has passed to other family members, and now, so I'd been going down there for quite a while myself. There's definitely similarities depending on where you are in New York and where you are in Palm Beach, and differences. How come this setting for you felt to be the best place for family secrets?
Well, I mean, you kind of have the whole idea where, funny thing is, I came down here right before COVID, and it really did feel like a fish out of water. I didn't know anyone else from the Northeast or anything. It was mainly, people had grown up here in the area and things like that. And it's a huge adjustment. I still miss fall, I miss the seasons a bit. But when COVID hit, it brought a lot of people down from New York. And again, similar to your situation, a lot of people had family that, they grew up coming here. And then to come here during COVID, they were like, okay, this is where we want to be. So we wound up meeting a lot more people from our area and kind of bringing our people down, which was nice. But yeah, the one thing I kind of liked about it was that, yes, there are pockets in New York that are very prestigious and high end for sure. And Palm Beach is the same thing. You have this, but you have it very secluded on its own island. You drive by there and you see, the Kennedy estate and, all these very well-known people and their families still live here. And it's, brand names, it's everything. And so it's kind of, you get a bit of that awe in when you see that. But also, what I like about having, a focus on that is that everything these people do, it's amplified. So if they're generous, they're the most generous people in the world. But if they're an Epstein, they do something bad, well, obviously that was like the worst thing in the world. But it means like you get all the amplified, you have a magnifying glass on you. So it allows for you to kind of create a lot of drama in that way. But also, one of the things I love to highlight in these stories is that it doesn't matter how much money you come from or where your background is, like human nature is human nature. You're never going to escape loss, trauma, heartbreak, insecurity. Those are things that no matter who you are, you're always, you're going to go through that. And that's why I like to highlight that between Isabel and between Rose, despite their backgrounds, they're really not that different.
Yes, exactly. And absolutely to your point, there are it's a very interesting place where you can see this magnitude of just ostentatious wealth, like you're driving through just an area and you're just like, how is this even a
hmm
real place? But there's also pockets that are kind of hidden that are the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And to believe that one doesn't exist on the back of the other is not seeing the area as a whole.
Mhm.
And that's kind of, what you can say about a lot of the characters. Evelyn is extremely crafty
Mhm.
and she goes about things a certain way. But like her and like Isabel and Rose, it's like they all have their motives for doing what they're doing. And it might seem sinister, but there is more overlap, regardless of their backgrounds, than they would think at first sight.
Yeah. It's all how they deal with their trauma and how they process it.
Did you have one particular character that you felt more attached to than the others? And how come you chose to keep it between those point of views and not Grant or James particularly at any point?
To be honest, kind of one of the main reasons that I didn't go with James or Grant was because uh, I'm still a little insecure with writing from a male's perspective. I feel like, as a woman, I can figure out the ways in which, we think, and we also tend to make things very complex, which allows for a lot more dynamic in terms of when you're doing the internal dialogue. So that was kind of one of those main reasons. And I thought just they offered the perfect spacing of telling the story as a whole. You have Evelyn, who's, very put together, wealthy, has the whole world at her fingertips, needs to get things her way or she's not happy. You have, Rose, who, she's a widow that, comes from a lot of debt. She's a struggling artist and she just wants to do well by her kid. So I can understand, as a mom myself, I can really understand, what that feels like and how all you're trying to do is the best for your kid, but also at the same time, you always feel like you're not doing enough. And then, Isabel just feeling very alone. I mean, you kind of think like, what does desperation look like when you have nothing else, going for you, when your last living relative is dead and you've got, and you discover this huge thing, like what you wouldn't would you'd probably stop at nothing to get to the truth about that and find answers about your life. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely, for sure. And I do wonder because I always love asking authors this, especially authors who do mystery, thriller, domestic suspense. For you, are you aware of every twist before you write it, or do you find yourself stumbling upon plot points as the process begins?
So, for the most part, I am a plotter. I'm in the middle of writing book six right now, and I know every twist and turn. I have everything laid out. But my journey with the tutor was kind of interesting because it wasn't actually the first book that I wrote. I'd written a book called it's going to be called The Aunt now. My publisher and I just worked on the title. It'll be coming out in June. But that was my first one that actually got me my agent. And while she was shopping that around, that one's very much based in Palm Beach and relies very heavily on the setting. But my agent is UK based, so we were having a bit of trouble with finding a UK publisher that could really relate to that. So during this time, while I was even still searching for an agent, I wrote The Tutor, and I'd given it to my agent as soon as I got her. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, you know what? I don't really know if I like the idea of the tutor, but like didn't like my storyline. I felt it was a little too predictable. And I said as much to my agent. I was like, maybe we don't submit that one. Like I'll work on something else. Um, but she came back to me. She's like, so don't be mad at me, but yeah, I was talking to a bunch of editors about the tutor and they really like this idea. And I was like, oh shoot. I'm like, I just don't know if they would even buy it because it's just not, it's too predictable. So, she did the best she could with giving me advice and how to fix it. And I finally just went, I have to rewrite this. Like, I'm not comfortable with it. And so I said, give me a month because I didn't want to wait too long for the editors to, fill their quota. And I, quickly just redid the whole thing. So in this sort of scenario, I did, I did kind of stumble upon it because again, the parts that I knew were predictable. I was like, okay, well, I've got to change this. How do I change it? And then I'd come up with that idea and go, okay, but now it's leading us to this part, which is also predictable. How do I change this up? So I was kind of surprising myself in that way for this one.
And were you happy with the outcome? Because I thought it was a really, really good read.
Thank you. Yeah, you know what? I was even surprised by the ending, and I was very satisfied because I ideally like to have a satisfying ending. I don't really like the, well, life sucks and then you die, and that's the end of it. I like to leave everybody feeling like, they really connected with these my goal is for them to connect with these characters. So to kind of have like their lives kind of suck after it, after I've put them through so much. I mean, it kind of is a bit disappointing. At the same time, you can't just be like, and everyone got married and got happy, and like this is like a fairy tale ending. So you try to, if there's a way you can kind of do the in between, which is what I think I was hopefully, in your opinion, able to do with this one.
What are some of your favorite things to read? Do you generally read in this genre, or are you, I know you said that you had written women's fiction before. Are you, is like that your comfort read?
You know what? It's funny. I read women's fiction when I was younger, like in my 20s, and I just kind of got more into mysteries because I've always loved puzzles, and no matter what, I will, I'll read everything cover to cover because I need to know whether I like it or not, or like the characters or not. I need to know if I got the ending right. And usually I'm thrown through a loop and it blows my mind. And yeah, it was helpful and hurtful at first when I was in this genre because I was like, I'd read something and go, oh, I could totally write this. And then I'd read another book and it would blow me away so much. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. I could never write this. So it took a while to kind of just gain my own confidence. But again, it just, I just was devouring the genre, reading everything I could and deconstructing it and, literally taking notes, going, okay, so there's going to be another plot twist here. Here's the timing of when they did it, deconstructing these characters and understanding their motive. It was just, and so it was very helpful. So yeah, right now I really read everything in the genre. Even I don't have usually a lot of time to watch a lot of TV. I have two young kids, so I have to monitor what I'm watching. But for the most part, when I do, it's like mystery, suspense, and things like that.
Well, thank you so much. The Tutor, like I said, it's definitely going to hit a lot of notes for people who are fans of domestic suspense, mystery, thriller. I was surprised by how many things opened up. There were things that I was like, okay, I could see where this might have come from. And then there were things that blindsided me while other
Yeah.
revelations were being made. So it was fun. In that way too. Thanks so much, Courtney. Can't wait to see what you have next. The Aunt is the next one that's coming out.
No, so the next one coming out is The Hostess. My publisher is UK based. So right now the tutor is out everywhere in the UK. It's only currently available as of today in audio and digital, but November 11th, 2025, the paperback's coming out. So the Hostess will be available audio digital January 15th, and the paperback will be available April 21st.
Very nice. Well, I hope to be able to talk to you about that when it comes
Oh, I'd
out.
love it.
Yeah, I would love it too. All right. This was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My guest was,
Courtney Psak.
and we are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.